Although we might not see the Kamaz Master Team at this year's Dakar Rally, we want to have a closer look at this dominant Dakar truck and team. And by dominant I mean they won the Dakar truck category 17 times in the last 20 years. And very often their trucks were on positions 1, 2 and 3 during stages. So let's have a closer look at the design of their Dakar truck. Kamaz is a Russian truck manufacturer that builds heavy-duty trucks for the Russian military and civil use. During the last years, they used their Kamaz 43509 truck. And in 2022, they introduced the new model, the Kamaz 43509-1. The truck uses a 13-liter straight 6-cylinder diesel engine with a single turbo, with around 1000 horsepower. The top speed is 165 km per hour. Acceleration is around 10 seconds to 100 km per hour, and the truck has a weight of 8600 kg without fuel. Since it's an off-road race truck, it needs some special suspension. And that's the first area where it's getting interesting. The Kamaz team was looking for a heavy-duty suspension design that could help their race truck, and they found it at the military. After the Second World War, multiple nations developed light tanks which could be thrown out of airplanes behind enemy lines and fly down on parachutes. By light, I mean that these tanks have a weight of around 8 tons, so pretty similar to the Kamaz racetrack. When such a tank is flying down, it shouldn't be too slow, otherwise it would be an easy target. If they go down too fast, they might break when they hit the ground. So they designed rockets that launch just before the ground to reduce the touchdown speed. Or they use large air cushions to reduce the impact. And of course these light tanks have super tough suspension to survive the landing. So Kamaz used the experiences of these tanks to build their heavy-duty race suspension. If we take a closer look, we can see that they use a typical live axle. But this one is not just held by the leaf spring package, it additionally has 2 coilovers per side and massive pull rods to connect them to the frame. This avoids the axle from being ripped out at heavy impacts. We can also see the anti-roll bar and rubber stops. If we take a closer look underneath, we can see that everything is covered and shielded, and they use deflectors to keep rocks away from important parts. The front wheel arch is pretty open, so damper cooling is not an issue here, but at the back we can see that there is 1 cooling pipe per damper. How that exactly works we will see in a minute. And that brings us to aerodynamics, a topic which is also becoming more important on these huge racetracks. The previous version used a smaller cabin with a boxy back and roof scoops. To protect them, they had deflectors in front of them. The new Kamaz truck uses a rounder, modern cabin, which is slightly taller. Because of the flat front, there is a huge high-pressure region, which Kamaz uses for a center air intake for the main water cooling. Behind that radiator is a fan, and we can see that the Kamaz team is carrying the same fan as spare part at the back with them, just in case. A bit behind the radiator is the huge 13-liter 6-cylinder engine, so it's sitting behind the front axle. Around the cabin, they use additional bars for protection. They also use air guides at the sides and top to guide the airflow around these relatively sharp edges and help to avoid separations. The roof scoops of the previous model changed to low air intakes for engine air and intercoolers to reduce frontal area. We can see that the exhaust and hence the turbocharger is sitting at the right-hand side of the engine. The charged air is guided upwards and splits into 2 intercoolers that lay flat and have a huge fan each. Between them the engine's air intake is located. It's then filtered by this huge cylindrical filter before being guided to the turbocharger. Behind this huge airbox is another airbox with an additional radiator. Having the intakes on top of the vehicle is important to catch the cleanest possible air. At the same time, it's important to keep the center of gravity as low as possible, so the intercoolers are flat and pretty low. If a radiator is placed that far up, it has to be worth it. You can see that the whole back of the truck is basically empty. Also, the fuel tank is split into 3 smaller tanks that are placed at the sides and back to keep them low. Together they hold around 900 liters. The fuel consumption in race trim is around 1 to 2 liters per 1 kilometer. In contrast to the previous model, the new Kamaz truck is reducing the wake at the back with a lower rear bodywork. The sidewalls are rigid metal walls, but again, to reduce the center of gravity, the top surface is light fabric. Of course, air can exit through there. So if we think about the flow within this back bodywork, we have some hot air flowing in from the center radiator, some additional air being added by the side intakes, and a rigid wall at the back with some gaps around the 2 spare wheels, which by the way are in upright position for faster handling and can be changed within 10 minutes on a stage. But this rigid back wall creates some higher pressure again, which might be the reason why the air intake for the rear damper cooling is positioned right here. And no, this spare fan is not connected to it. But it seems like there is a own separate fan inside this drum to cool the dampers. So, from an aerodynamics point of view, they could still improve the design by optimizing the relatively hidden intercooler intake. Maybe they could even use the high front pressure and guide it to the intercoolers, and they could open up the back wall to increase the pressure behind the truck and have less drag. In addition to their truck design, the Kamaz Master Team is a highly experienced Dakar team. And that goes for drivers, navigators and mechanics. And of course, it's a well-funded team. So I hope you liked this little insight into this amazing piece of engineering and see you at the next video.